Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS. Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS. Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.
Well, hello and good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Apex Racing TV, and welcome to Season 6 of the Evolution Sim Racing GT3 Championship. We've got a fantastic season ahead and a lot to go over. Sit back and grab a bag of popcorn because this is going to be some fun. My name is Ron Mullins. Alongside me in the commentary booth is Aaron Smith. And in the virtual production hall, we have Joshua Wilkie. Tonight, we kick this season off at one of the most venerated and storied racetracks in the world, Circuit de la Sauve in Le Mans, where the drivers of this series have a 1-hour race to tackle right in front of their face. And now, Aaron, putting these cars around this track isn't the most off-the-wall combination in the world. However, there's definitely going to be a decent amount of curveballs thrown these drivers' ways. What are your thoughts heading into this opening race of this season?
Well, it's a fantastic track to open a season at, isn't it? I mean, Le Mans, that's going to be a spectacle and a half, an entire field filled with very highly skilled GT3 drivers. And, well, for the first time, these GT3 cars can fly around here. We've got a fairly modern GT3 field for the first time in what feels forever. We've got the new McLaren, of course, that just came in. We've got the Audi that I think was a couple of seasons ago. We've just got a stacked field full of fantastic cars, fantastic drivers, and Le Mans is always just such an entertaining race. The strategy is always unpredictable, the racing probably even more so, and in a series like this, I think this is going to be one to behold, and it should set the stage for a very, very entertaining season.
Now we've got a fantastic slate of racetracks that we're going to be going between now and the end of the season, which is all the way in November. So we'll look through the schedule right now. Of course, kicking off the season today at Le Mans, going to be heading to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway road course for the second race of the season in 1 week's time. Then we're going to be heading to Barcelona, Interlagos, Montreal, Circuit Gilles Villeneuve in Montreal. Then we're going to be heading to the Red Bull Ring, Watkins Glen, Fuji, Sebring, and Laguna Seca to bring this season to a close. We've got a mix of 1-hour races like the one we're going to be having tonight, and we've also got some 2 30-minute races to look forward to throughout the rest of this season. It's going to be a fun one and a whole lot of tracks to look forward to and a whole lot of stuff to break down for what is going to be a fantastically entertaining season. We're still in the midst of a practice session, so a little bit of time until we get into the meat and potatoes, and we should probably talk a little bit about the format that these drivers will be tackling here for this opening race of the season. We got a practice session that we're still in the midst of now. We're going to be coming to a close in the not too distant future, and a 15-minute long qualifying session, only 4 laps at these drivers' disposal to try and get the job done, and then a 1-hour race to look forward to later on. And of course, all the races from this season, season 6 of the ESR GT3 series, going to be streamed exclusively here on Apex Racing TV. And all the viewers tuning into this opening broadcast of this season, we welcome you all aboard to the fantastic action that we have here on Apex, and we hope you will stay tuned throughout the rest of this season. But a 1-hour race to look forward to. Aaron, you've had some experience running in some endurance races in the world of iRacing, so I feel like it's probably more so your position to kind of share the challenges when it comes to tackling a track like this with a 1-hour race in these cars.
Yeah, of course. I don't think I've ever actually had the best luck at Le Mans, unfortunately, but my God, I do love this track. It is so much fun. I always tend to go with the prototypes if I can. They are just so quick around these tracks. And the GTPs, the LMP1s, of course, my God. Even the tractor, the R18, that car was so much fun to drive around here. Took a lot of skill. I don't think I've actually ever driven a GT3 around Le Mans, which is a little bit surprising. But I can imagine it's both tricky but incredibly fun, especially once you start getting into the latter half of the lap, when you start going into the Porsche curves and that section. It can just be a joy once you get every single corner right. But if you get it wrong, like we've seen in sim and in real life, it can end your race in an instant, as those high-speed corners, one slight twitch and it's probably going to be game over. So I'm expecting, you know, a 1 hour race. Like you said, it's a fairly lengthy one, especially in a GT3 car. It's going to be very tactical, very tame, I think, for a lot of these drivers. And I think it's going to be half and half. You'll get some of the more experienced drivers up at the top being sensible, saving fuel. And then you'll get some of the drivers at the back potentially wanting to prove themselves and trying to lunge some moves up the inside, being on the more aggressive side. So, you know, just keep an eye out for a couple drivers who could be a little bit optimistic in today's race.
I like that term you used a few moments ago, Aaron, tactical. That's really the mindset that a lot of these drivers are probably going to have heading into this race. Of course, the challenges of a 1 hour sports car race, they're fairly cut and dry. You know, you have to deal with a little bit of traffic here around this track. Traffic may not be too big of a factor, but still, you know, you got a whole lot of race cars. You may have some chaos break out if some drivers drop down the running order, having to make some early pit stops. We may see some traffic even at this track, which is a little bit on the longer end. In fact, one of the longest tracks, in fact the longest track that we'll be visiting all season long here. But there's still some other points to mention as well. This is the first season in the history of the series to have open setup, so that's going to be a big factor. Lots of drivers going to be a little bit experimental when it comes to trying to cook up some good setups for their race cars. We have mandatory pit stops as well. The fuel is limited to 90% in these GT3 race cars, so they will have to come into the pits at some point during this race. When it comes to the incident points as well, which can be a big factor in iRacing events, there's a 17 incident point limit. After you hit that, you will incur a drive-through penalty, and then if you hit 22, you get cut, you get disqualified from the race. And at a track like this, where a lot of the drivers begin to eat the curbs like it's cereal for breakfast, lots of these drivers are going to try and get a little bit too close to comfort to those incident point penalties. We also have a one faster pair available to these drivers if they get into a little bit of trouble in the early stages. Double points as well for these 1 hour races, and we have a decent amount of them throughout this season. So a whole lot of stuff to keep in mind, but right now these drivers tackling the racetrack for their first qualifying laps.
I always found this first lap to just be a warm-up, to be honest. They've got 15 minutes, which should give them, I think, around nearly 3 or 4 laps to get a time on the board. But this first lap, starting just before the last few corners, you know, your tyres are absolutely freezing cold, and you just got to give it a lap or two. Not only just for the car to warm up, and it's also just time for you to get in the groove of a qualifying lap and to push these cars to the absolute limit. I always found qualifying around this track was so difficult. It's probably, I'd say, the hardest track to qualify on in iRacing, and I am including the Nürburgring in that. I think this is actually a harder track to get the most out of, because I feel like the Nürburgring, there's kind of one specific line that you can follow. There's kind of a way to go fast, whereas round here it's, you know, a properly built racetrack, and you can just take so many different approaches through every corner. And the off tracks, like you were mentioning, Ron, are killer around here. Almost every single corner, like you said, you have to eat the curves around here. You have to make sure you're using every single part of the track, and if you're not, you're just throwing away time. And you just have to go with what mindset. Are you going to be safe, just put a lap time on the board, or are you going to go full out, try and go for pole and try and lead away at the front of the field?
Honestly, I have to say I'm with you, Aaron, because, I mean, you brought up a very good point when it comes to the Nordschleife. I remember driving that track in Forza Motorsports 4 many moons ago as a kid in elementary school. So I know that track virtually like it's the back of my hand. I've done way too many laps to count, way too many laps really to share here on this broadcast. Otherwise, people are going to have some very odd assumptions to make about the content of my character. But a lot of the people in the world of iRacing and the world of sim racing, period, have a whole lot of laps around the Nordschleife. And also, when it comes to qualifying at that track, you go into it cautious. You go into it knowing, okay, I'm running around the green hell. It's going to be challenging. If I can just put together a clean lap, I'm going to put myself in a pretty good position. But at a track like this, which, as you pointed out, Aaron, a little bit more put together. It is technically a street circuit, as some of the sections, including this one, that we're seeing the driver of the 172 car, including the 216 of Thomas Pugh, that we're now following in one of those newer McLarens. More on that in a little bit. Even though that this track is still technically a street circuit, it is a purpose-built racetrack that had a decent chunk of it as well, and it also leads to some drivers being a bit more aggressive, some of these corners a bit more inviting, that can lead to a mistake here and there. So I honestly kind of gotta say that I'm with you, Aaron, in terms of the challenges, trying to piece together a qualifying lap around this track, because it can be a little bit mesmerizing. Driving around the track that isn't as long as a Nordschleife, where we're setting like 8-minute qualifying times, but at a track that's about 8 miles long, these drivers still on track for a decent amount of time, so it can be a little bit hard to maintain your expectations heading into the qualifying laps.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I remember trying to qualify for the Majors 24 many times over the years, and honestly, the qualifying session was just always the most stressful part, actually, because, I mean, not only with the majors, obviously, you're trying to get yourself into different splits, whereas this series is obviously just for position, but it just always, there's a lot of pressure. You know, every single corner, there's always time to be gained, and even if a lap can feel good, you're probably still about a second off the pace, and it just feels so hopeless. You have to have the willpower, the mindset to do a fast lap round here. And, well, as the first few times start to come onto the board, you can see Lucchesi at the top of the timing sheets. Nearly a second ahead of the competition so far, as, Deno Brager going very close to his time. Only 600 separate those two. Potentially we already seeing the four mounts of a championship battle going on over the course of this season. They seem very closely matched, but like I said, just the first few laps coming in, some people taking different approaches, maybe some people got off tracks, and by the end of the session we'll have a good idea as to, you know, everyone's sort of pace. I mean, qualifying can be different from the race, but you know, you're force ending it round here, and it's tricky. Off tracks are plenty, but you've just got to put yourself, I think, in a decent position, and you'll probably be happy with that qualifying.
I think we'll talk about some of the drivers that, some of the lap times that these drivers are setting so far in this qualifying session. We'll touch on a little bit of more important information when it comes to following this series. We do have 3 classes to talk about. The Elite class are for the cars numbered between 200 and 299. That is indicated with the red ticker on our wonderful SDK graphics that we have here on Apex Racing TV. The Premier class, meanwhile, that's for cars numbered between 100 and 199. That is marked out with the green ticker. And then the Evo class is cars number 1 through 99. And you can see that with the white ticker on our graphics. And speaking of the drivers running in the different classes, the driver running at the front currently on the provisional pole at a 3-minute 36.484. That is Lucchesi, and we are talking, well, we are actually told about this. Full credit to the series admins who've been very helpful for us to kind of get a grips to this series and learn about a lot of the drivers and the stuff that has gone on in previous seasons here with this series. Luke Lucchesi is incredibly fast. The elite driver is looking to defend back-to-back titles. He's won the Season 4 championship, he's won the Season 5 championship as well, and is trying to go for the three-peats, and this would be a fantastic way to kick this season off. Of course, still halfway left to go in this qualifying session, and still a lot of time left for these drivers to set some even more lap times. But as it stands at the moment, looking pretty good for Lucchesi, the South African, behind the wheel of the number 224 RDSA Esports Porsche, heading his way off through our nage of turn number 20 right now. That would be a fantastic way to kick this season off for him.
Yeah, definitely, as he decides to abandon this lap, interestingly enough. Perhaps maybe an off-track somewhere and choosing to reset back to the pits as quickly as you can. And sometimes the strat in qualifying here is to just put 2 laps in the car, especially if you have a lot of time in qualifying. Put 2 laps. That first lap, like I was saying before, just be a bit of a warm-up, and then that second lap is the full push. But if you get an off track, you have to reset as quickly as you can. Otherwise, well, you might not have enough time to get another lap in. And a couple of drivers clearly struggling with off tracks here already. You saw Lucchesi going through Arnage there. It looked like he did get a little bit deep into the corner, but you kind of have to. You have to get as close to that outside wall as you can. But he'll give it another go as he begins his first lap once again. We're on board with his teammates. This is Tristan, also from South Africa, interestingly enough, as he's in the new McLaren, like we've mentioned. Very, very enjoyable car to drive, I must say. The MP4 12C will be missed. God bless that car. It was such a fun car to drive over the many, many years it's been on iRacing. As Andrew Fairley goes to the top of the timing sheets in his Lamborghini. Nearly, again, oh, that's a bit of a tricky one going through turn 2. You have to be careful on the exit of that corner. It can catch you out so easily. And if it does, it's super frustrating because it's at the start of your lap. So Andrew is probably, as he is doing, resetting all the way back to give it another go.
And as Fairley set that fairly quick lap time at the front of the board, see what I did there, he did get usurped by Denabrega. That was the worst line so far on this broadcast. I would like to wholeheartedly apologize to both my colleagues and the viewers tuning into this broadcast tonight on Apex Racing TV. I'll tell you what, that quote was so bad, our producer was very briefly coughing there, so I think I may have done some actual physical harm to our producer with that quote. But these drivers tackling their final qualifying laps at this point in time. Still, I mean, you got 4 laps around this track, so that's pretty much going to run out the 15 minutes that these drivers have time-wise. So a whole lot of opportunities to try and get the job done here for the first qualifying session of the season. The real question is, Aaron, how important and how integral is this qualifying session going to be for the success of these drivers in the race tonight?
It's very, very difficult to tell. I mean, especially at Le Mans, some races can be super unpredictable. I mean, your race can be completely lost on lap 1 if you maybe get a slowdown. I mean, the slowdowns at this track are super punishing, as that's fairly going for a fairly hefty spin. See, now I've done it. This is what you've done to me, Rob. And it is really easy for us to make that joke. And if Andrew is watching this broadcast after the race, I'm sorry, you're going to get an hour and a half of this, so just prepare yourself. But yeah, that was a fairly hefty impact. And honestly, those first few corners here at Le Mans are really tricky. You've got that bump which Andrew hit on the inside of turn 1, which you have to be super careful of, and then the braking for the first chicane is super duper careful. And if you hit the curb on the inside wrong as well, that's going to send you round. As we can have a quick replay of what happened. You just see that bump on the inside just catches the car out slightly. And, well, the Lamborghini does tend to be a little bit tricky to drive, and, well, clearly catching Andrew out there fairly quickly, and that probably is going to bring the end to his qualifying run, and yes, it is. He's not gone back out onto the track, and I believe we are getting towards the end of people doing their qualifying runs, so I don't really know how many other people are going to go quicker or faster than the position that they're currently in.
Yeah, we gotta wait and see if these drivers will have the opportunity to improve. Thankfully, we don't have too many adverse weather conditions. The track temperature, pretty nice, 82 degrees Fahrenheit at the moment. I'm not sure exactly how that would convert into Celsius. I need that just at my side whenever I'm on the air, it feels like, that discussion always gets popped up. There we go, 28 degrees Celsius and 22 the ambient temperature Celsius, and that's 72, I believe, Fahrenheit. Should know that. There we go, 72 Fahrenheit in sim. So pretty decent track conditions for these drivers. Not overly hot, not overly humid. It is just about right. So these drivers running into some pretty good conditions to try and set their quick lap time. So I'm curious if these drivers will just have the opportunity to try and improve. Lots of the drivers on the grid on what will probably be their last qualifying laps. Not a whole lot of time left to go in this session. So at this point in time, these drivers looking to run out the clock, coming up to about 13 minutes right now with this qualifying session already on the board. So not a whole lot of time left for these drivers to try and get it done. However, they're certainly going to push it. It's still Dena Brega at the front of this field overall at a 3-minute 55.7 with a big slide from Mickey heading through into the Ford chicanes towards the end of this lap. The 117 car going for a spin. That is not going to do his lap time any favor. He's now going to be still in 29th at the moment, not improving on his time there. Moving over to some of the other classes that we have right now. Gattuso, hopefully I got that name pronunciation correct. He's currently qualified in 8th. He was qualified in 7th, but some drivers jumping in front of him has moved him into 8th. Meanwhile, in the other category, Corey Price, the Dutchman, currently qualified in 9th. So a lot of these drivers already getting their quick qualifying times on the board. Corey Price in that Premier class versus Gattuso in that Evo class. So the drivers already getting the lap times on the board. Some of these viewers tuning into the stream may have just been able to tell that I'm still getting my bearings straight when it comes to which class is which with the colors there. I may need to get my class's prescription changed, otherwise I may have some trouble reading some of the names out on this broadcast. But nevertheless, not a whole lot of time left for these drivers. Stefano Gattuso coming across the line now. Will it be an improvement on his time? How small little mistake heading through the Ford chicanes. Will he improve on that 3-minute 57.0? I don't believe he will. And with only less than 30 seconds left in this qualifying session, Aaron, looking pretty good for Dena Brega.
Yeah, he just looked fairly consistent throughout that entire qualifying session compared to a lot of other drivers who've definitely struggled around this Le Mans circuit. And well, something that I've always noted whenever I have done either broadcasting or actually racing here at Le Mans during a league is that Le Mans always seems to be the spanner, you know, the one where some drivers are just ridiculously quick compared to other tracks. So I think this race is mainly going to be about momentum building for the rest of the season. So yeah, good luck, Ron, for this very big grid.
Well, thankfully, we do have the ability to split it apart. I may do the top 20, and we'll move on from there, have a huge field of race cars to look through, and it's going to be led by the South African driver of Tristan Dena Brega. He is going to be leading them in the 270 RDSA esports car. Starting alongside him on the front row is going to be Andrew Fairley in the ADX Racing Esports 246. That's going to be the reigning two-time champion in the Premier class. Lucchesi going to be starting this race in 3rd. De Vries going to join him on that 2nd row. Ryan Odom's going to be starting this race in 5th. Then it's going to be Rettenbach. I probably killed that pronunciation. I apologize. He's going to be starting this race in 6th. Luke Van Gortel going to be starting this race in P7. Stefano Gattuso going to be starting this race in 8th. And we can look through the rest of the field. Rounding at the top 10 is going to be Corey Price in the 131 car. Ruben Baring's going to round out your top 10. That's Matt Hoyland, I probably killed that pronunciation, my apologies. He's going to be starting this race in the 223 car in 11th. Thomas Pugh going to be starting this race in 12th. Tom Weston going to be starting this race in P13. Jean McLuhan going to be starting this race in 14th. Nick Stubb in 15th. Chris Keenan in P16. And rounding out your top 20 is going to be Barrett Bearings in 17th. Richard Acock in P18. Corey Maxim in 19th. And Rob Aston rounding out your top 20.
Yeah, well, the rest of the grid all the way down to 48th place. This should be fun. Matthew Jones in 21st place. Noel Brown in 22nd. Malcolm Coates in 23rd. Victor Van Ziest in 24th place. 25th is Bostock. 26th, Provost. 27th place is Ashley Brooks. 28th is Brandon. 29th is Kostrig. 30th place is Ludbrook. 31st is Ryan Worsley. 32nd is Rob McKee. And then in 33rd is Sacrobus Slet. Oh my god. Sarakard Slesser. I'm so sorry. 34th is Turfruer. 35th is Peter Black. 36th is Liam Kelso. 37th, Martin Koch. 38th is Sparler. 39th is Danny Weir. 40th place is Stefan Donnelly. 41st is Gareth Newton. 42nd is Jeffrey Darman. 43rd is Sean Clark. 44th is James Pallett. 45th is Luke King. 46th is Darren Sharples. 47th is Alex Fretwell. And last, in 48th place, is Mark Wesley. Oh my god, I'm so sorry if I got any of those names wrong. But we're only human.
Yeah, we will slowly get acclimatized to this series, certainly after this broadcast tonight on Apex Racing TV. We're going to have a pretty good idea as to how this season is going to look like. 48 cars ready to hit this racetrack and get that green flag out in just a couple of moments' time. Gotta say, it looked like there was a little bit of disorganization at the front of the field. Not sure what's possibly going on there. Hopefully there's not an issue for some of our front row sitters. Gotta say, Jeffrey Damon has not taken to the grid, unless I'm very much mistaken. So maybe something going on with the driver, the number 44 car, but nevertheless, you can see that field coming out of one of the last corners on this racetrack, the Corvette curves, and that small little flat out blast between that and the Ford chicanes to bring this lap to a close. We have a threatening racetrack, a threatening field full of GT3 competitors looking to start off this season in the right way. They want to be on the top step of the podium. The real question is, will they be able to do it with 1 hour of racing in front of their face? We welcome you all to a brand new adventure here on Apex Racing TV. The green flag is out and the drivers are on their way. Lots of drivers are already starting to slow down a little bit. Gotta say, folks, the green flag doesn't come out with the green flag command from iRacing. So that BMW that just jumped in front of the field, that is going to be a pretty significant penalty for Corey Price. He's already made his way up 8 spots. That is going to be very short-lived for him. Gotta say, full transparency, folks, seeing that green flag, green light graphic appear on our screen got me caught in the red mist as this big spin coming out of the opening corners of this lap, coming out of the Dunlop chicane. That is 2 spinners going around, some synchronized spinning coming out of turn number 3. I don't believe that'll hurt anybody. It didn't look like there's a major contact with the cars that were stopped on the outskirts of the corner. But that's going to be a pretty big price for the drivers that violated that start procedure. That I believe the driver that already picked up that penalty has either been forced to give up that spot or not. Actually, no, Corey Price is still leading this field at the moment in the 131 car. However, he is going to be slapped with a pretty big penalty, as are a decent chunk of the field that did not really follow these start procedures, folks. A little bit confusing for some of them, and I think that we'll probably hear a lot from race control in the next few moments.
Well, I have been part of a few series which have done this sort of start procedure before, and, well, as much as in a perfect world it would be absolutely beautiful, unfortunately, we don't live in a perfect world, and I've been a couple leagues have done this, and honestly, it's gone wrong every single time, because there will always be 1 or 2 people that just, out of habit, or out of, just necessity, they'll see the green flag and they will floor it, and then they might have a moment of realization, but it will be too late. And that's just what you get, as that's a Porsche diving up the inside at the second chicane. Very opportunistic move, and this is what you're going to get on these first few laps here at Le Mans. Just a couple drivers trying to take it easy, get through these first few laps, while other drivers are thinking, I want to be in front of you, and blast off into the distance. So this should be entertaining as we head all the way down to one of the best overtaking opportunities on the track, as a couple drivers eyeing up a potential move. Bit sketchy going into here, and well, into that corner doesn't seem like anyone's going for a move lower down the grid, as there is a huge gap from about 14th to 15th, already about 3 seconds. As going into here, Alex Fretwell trying to make a move on some cars ahead. Sharples trying to get a move on Clark as well. And the long slipstream train all the way down to Indianapolis begins. And, well, going side by side into Indy is very, very risky indeed. But if you can get it right on these opening few laps, you could find yourself up a couple of places. And it could really give yourself a boost into these next few laps.
Ooh, and we're seeing that side-by-side fight heading through into Indianapolis. Danny Weir behind the wheel of the DXT Cyan number 55 car, currently running down at 36th at the moment in that Audi, maybe trying to go for a move in the not-too-distant future, and nearly running into the back the car that was right in front of him, that was McKee, and was right in front of him, currently running down in 35th. That was near disaster, with those two cars heading down into the braking zone of Arnage towards the end of this lap. Price is still leading, however, I think he may have to come in to serve a drive-through penalty in the not-too-distant future, because that's a pretty blatant violation of the start procedures. I'll tell you what, Aaron, you brought up a pretty good point in reference to that happening at the very beginning. I even forgot about the interesting starting procedure that's used with this series. I'm sure some of the drivers just getting caught up in the red mist a little bit. I've done some race officiating for a series where we do not follow the green flag call. Green flag call is actually given out by race control in sessions. There's a big wreck coming out of the Corvette curve. Not sure who that was in the McLaren that just went off the track. That was Brandette, possibly. Well, right behind Brandette currently is Bostock, James Bostock in the Kame GP2 McLaren, going for a major moment coming out of the Corvette curves, but surprisingly rejoining the race without any further incident.
Yeah, I don't know what quite happened there. I don't know if it was contact on the end of the Porsche curves there, not quite sure. But that was a fairly hefty impact, and he's definitely got damage to his McLaren. Just behind Bearings, Otens and Van Goortel are going wheel to wheel. And, well, we can take a look at the green flag start in just a second. Going to wait for a few more corners as these guys trying to overtake one another in the first few corners of this lap. And it's a very, very difficult opening few sequence of corners, but here is the green flag start, and we can watch what on earth happened at the start of the race.
We're going to find that replay there to see exactly what went wrong. I think it was just a big miscommunication for a lot of the drivers, maybe race control not exactly getting the point across. Corey Price, certainly, I mean, he was the main driver that took advantage of that confusion at the very beginning of the race. However, I think chances are he is going to be paying the price for that as well.
Yeah, I want to see Corey Price.
And I think we may have just very briefly lost out on our producer there. Welcome back, Josh, and what a fantastic way to come back, as we got a battle right now going on a little bit farther down the running. I say farther down the running, or what am I saying? This is a battle for P2 between Brainback and that's Fairley that he's going side by side with. That's a pretty good fight. And look at Gattuso there as well. So Stefano trying to get a wheel. He's trying to get a wheel in edgewise, so to speak, heading his way off into the Porsche curves. The driver, the number 42 car, starting to risk it for the biscuit a little bit. The driver is currently leading in the Evo category. Meanwhile, in the top class, the elite class, it is fairly sure that he is running good in this race right now. Not in the overall lead, but he is still leading in the elite category. Meanwhile, in the premier class and overall, it is still Corey Price leading it at the moment. Gotta say, credit where credit's due to Price. The fact that he has seemingly gone away with that. I mean, I'm not entirely sure if there is actual race control in this session right now, unless I'm very much mistaken. So I guess he would not accrue some sort of penalty from this. That's... I am...
Yeah, there's...
I will be... Yeah, that's... I guess I'll be fully upfront, considering that we're going to be on these broadcasts for the rest of the season. From my experience being in race control, if you're going to have a green flag come out and have the drivers ignore the iRacing green flag, you should probably have race control be in here at least for the start, just so they can enforce some sort of penalties. So, I mean, credit where credit's due to Corby Price for finding a fantastic loophole and finding a way to get himself into the lead of the race. I'm not entirely sure if he will be able to get away with this. That's a big off heading into the chicane. That may be around a bowling heading off into the Dunlop chicane at the very beginning of this race. Who was that in the BMW that just came barreling in like a bat out of hell?
Yeah,
Possibly
no idea
exactly sure who that was. There's Sparza. That is a very similar looking race car, the 47, getting away with that. I don't even think he picked up a slowdown penalty. Well done from the 47. I think we're going to take a look at replay, and this is going to be absolutely horrifying.
Yeah, I think it might have been contact from behind, or maybe just a... Oh, that's a huge overcorrection, and oh my god. That's possibly the best...
Yee-doggy!
Yeah, that's the best car control... Well, the best and worst. The worst because he caused his own spin, but the best because he managed to catch it.
That is sheer luck.
Perhaps, but either way, that is a drift and a half, and if I do not see that on some kind of iRacing highlight, I will be protesting, because that was incredible, and I actually think if he hasn't gotten a slowdown from that, just wow, that's possibly the best thing I've ever seen in iRacing. I'm absolutely speechless from Joe Sparza. That is incredible, and how he did not make contact with that Porsche is beyond me. I don't know, but wow, Joey Sparza, look at this man, absolutely insane, as he still tries to fend off the cars behind. And I don't think he lost any positions during that, and well, he might have gained some, you know, hush hush, but wow, yeah, just utterly wow. As on this lap, just looking at the timing board, Corby Price has lost a huge amount of time.
Yeah, you can see that gap is now about 0.2 of a second, still going down between those two. We may have a fight on our hands between Price and Fairley. They're actually going to be swapping positions. Fairley now taking the lead of this race over Price, and I gotta say, Gattuso now slotted his way into third, so we've got a three-car fight at the north end of the field between Fairley in the top class, Price in the middle, and then Gattuso in the Evo category. So we've got an Elite, a Premier, and an Evo class driver at the front of this field right now, all with very different looking race cars. We've got a Lamborghini, a BMW, and a Ferrari at the front of this field. And we also have to say credit where credit's due to De Vries, who's currently running in the 4th position. He's one of the only drivers up and down this grid that has maintained his very position from when he started this race. Started in P4, still running in P4 at this point in time. Meanwhile, Corby Price running in P2 now. He's still up 7, and Gattuso up 5. Well done for a lot of the drivers cutting their way through the field like a hot knife through butter.
Yeah, just part of the incidents and a couple of people getting slowdowns on those first few laps, as I believe it was Price who did get a slowdown in that like latter part of the lap, and that's why he lost so much time. But honestly, Corby Price seems to have some, really good pace compared to a lot of the guys around him. So, you know, maybe we could see him as he gets very squirrely on the last corner. But we could see him fighting for the lead against Andrew Fairley. And, well, I mean, Corby Price, from what I'm hearing, he probably will get a post-race penalty. But, I mean, it will still be entertaining for him nonetheless. And he probably knows he'll get a post-race penalty as well. But why not? Carry on. You know, you might get a big enough gap to the car behind that you could keep your position. But this should be an entertaining race up at the front of the field. It looks fairly clean so far, and all of these guys seem to have bucket loads of pace.
Yeah, we still have to worry about those pit stops later on in this race. We've had a lot of drama go on so far, some very close calls, some incidents early on, and some battling for the lead. Another incident, that time coming out of Mulsanne. I'm not sure who that was that just went off the circuit, a big puff of smoke coming out of the corner, but I think they may have been able to get away with that fairly scot-free. Gonna take a look at the replay to see exactly what may have happened here. We're following John McClone, who may have been the driver involved in that, the driver of the Porsche San Diego Porsche, the number 292. possibly having a small little issue. Saw him off the track there. I think he may have possibly had some sort of internet connection issue leading to some sort of disconnect, taking him out of this race. Technical issues never ideal in the world of iRacing, but that was a big puff of smoke heading through. That was actually Tetra Rouge coming onto Mulsanne, so still got to get my corner names correct here at Le Mans. But that was a big moment. I am very shocked that we didn't see a driver possibly get caught up in all that smoke and dust.
Yeah, definitely, especially going through such a fast corner like that. It can be very unnerving, as this is Thomas Pugh trying to defend from Nick Stube behind. As this is Robin Aston as well, trying to gain on the McLaren in front of him, as Jones in front of him, Matthew Jones, as they try to battle it out. And well, you were mentioning about the pit stops, that was not a great exit from Matthew Jones, and actually this could be a chance for Aston to really gain onto the back of him, and it's a shame we don't have the Aston GT3, otherwise that would be a very fitting name, as Andrew Fairley still defending from Corey Price. And this is what I was talking about. Corey does seem to have a lot of pace in his back pocket, and well, I mean, look at the gap between P3 and P4 now. It's just these guys who are really keeping it clean and giving us a great watch so far. Is Corey going to try and go for the move this early in the race, pulling towards the outside as we head into Indianapolis? This is going to be a bold move from one of your premier drivers, currently in second place, trying to fight for the lead of the race, which could be a bit of a controversial one. Up the inside he goes into Indianapolis. This could be a tight one, as Fairley just seems to have the better run coming out of the corner, and I think Andrew just about holds on to the lead on this lap. But Corey Price is giving it his all, and as long as he doesn't get a slowdown again, this is going to be a very entertaining battle for the lead of the race. But who is fuel saving out of those top three? And we do have to think about it, as this is Liam Kelso as well, trying to go for a move around the outside of Indy. A very risky move, like we've said before. Can end in disaster if you get it wrong, but the Scotsman goes up the inside, and that's a beautiful move up into 31st place for the Scotsman.
Yeah, that was a pretty slick move heading through Indianapolis. That section is tricky enough, single file, let alone side by side. So some drivers are already feeling a little bit antsy and going for some slightly aggressive move towards the beginning of this race. Speaking of, we may have a fight on our hands between Fairley and Price. They've just swapped positions. That's going to be Corey Price trying to retake the lead. Fairley coming in along with Gattuso, so the two drivers running in the lead of the Elite and Evo category. They have come in for a very early decision to come down pit lane. What do you make of this, Aaron?
Well, it's no shock that two of the drivers from the same team are coming into the pits. We've also got DeFries from ART Sim Racing coming in as well. So clearly some people thinking that pitting early is the way to go. In my experience in sim racing, would say otherwise. The only time you should really come in early is during multi-class, but you know, I could be completely wrong, and these guys could blow everyone out of the water and then end up winning the race. But we will see. There's Andrew Fairley, DeFries and Gattuso, like we said, all coming into the pits. No one else coming in, so it's just these three, and we'll see how long their pit stop is going to be. It should be fairly short, as that's a very, very quick pit stop from DeFries as he comes out way ahead of the two ADX cars, and Andrew Fairley having a mare in his pit stop. He's so much slower than Gattuso and DeFries. What on earth has happened to Andrew Fairley? Potentially a penalty? Just coming into the pits? That's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah, I'm not too sure what that could be. It would have to be some sort of pit penalty, because of course the incident point penalties are drive-throughs, so not sure what in the world is going on for Fairley. He's now out and away. 40.7 seconds stopped in the box compared to a lot of the other drivers that have come down pit lane. Gattuso was only stopped for 26.2. There you can see Fairley 1 minute and 17.6 seconds down pit lane. That is a crusher for Fairley. That is going to drop him down to P45 at the moment. So the Lamborghini that was leading, I would say comfortably, in the elite category. I mean, it was shocking as is seeing DeFries get the move done on him to pretty much inherit the lead in the elite class, but that was just an absolute stinker of a pit stop. I feel like some of his pit crew may have just been drinking a little bit too much cough syrup heading into that. That was bizarre.
Oh, they weren't drinking cough syrup, they were drinking night pills. I think they were preparing for Le Mans, trying to get their sleep in, and in fact got the wrong tablets, and in fact they were just asleep. I do think it was a penalty though, just coming in at the pits. Hello, that's a very optimistic move from Brian Bach as he battles with Van Gorsel, two of the Porsches going wheel to wheel, and clearly Brayton Bach did not get a good exit out of that corner, and Van Gorsel goes back ahead. But now the slipstream coming into effect as we head all the way down to Indy once again, seeming to be one of the favourite overtaking places on the track for many people, but I think Brayton Bach is just going to stay behind for the moment. Yeah, you can see him lifting off there and kind of accepts that, yeah, maybe was a bit of an optimistic move up the inside, and will concede 5th place for now as Price up at the front still pulling away from the guys behind. This is a little bit further back. Robin Aston and Matthew Jones still going to battle. They're kind of bringing in the people behind them into this as well. They have to be careful not to be caught out like that, as that's Bearings going up the inside of Robin Aston. And I believe he's gotten the place. He has. Up into 3rd place goes Breck Bearings. And wow, that was a very, very opportunistic move. He saw it, went up the inside, and now he's got to defend it from 3 cars behind, as that's allowed Jones to romp away ahead and just get that little bit of a buffer that he was hoping for. But here comes Brooks now at the inside. That was uncomfortably close as we headed into the Porsche curves. But now they all have to follow single file. And that was a great couple of corners by this little bubble, battling all the way from 12th all the way down to 16th. Oh, that's a spinner. Ooh. Oh, that's a big one. And
Bearings going for a spin. And was that Aston or Brooks that took fantastic evasive action to avoid either running into the side of Bearings or running into the wall? Yeah, might have been Brooks, the driver in the Evo category, currently running 14th overall. May have just nearly encountered an absolute disaster for him. You gotta take a look at a replay to see that drama coming out of the Porsche curves. These cars are on the limit of control. We're gonna be riding on board with the number 19 car of Ashley Brooks. There you can see the spinner right in front having to take evasive action into the grass. Oh, that was a matter of inches between himself and the tire barriers there. That was dangerously close.
Did not know we were part of the World Endurance Championship, because many drivers in the GT3 category today have decided, let's do the Dakar. They are all drifting for their lives, and Andrew Brooks, oh my lord, that was just Ashley Brooks, my apologies, just wow. Hats off again. Another driver showing amazing car control, managing to keep it out of the wall, and well, I don't actually think he lost any places from that. So fair play, he's kept it on the road, lost a couple seconds, but he's still in this race, and that is what matters, as we've got about 40 minutes to go in this race. Honestly, it's flown by at the moment. And this is Thomas Pugh going wheel to wheel with, I believe this is Hoyland in the BMW in front of him. And I mean, if you need any more evidence that that BMW is a chonkster, I mean, just look, compared to the Ferrari, the McLaren, you literally cannot see it. I don't understand why BMW is always just a huge chonk. Anyone who's seen the new M5 will know exactly what I'm on about. 2.5 tons, my god. But here is Thomas Pugh going up the inside. This should be a fairly easy move for him. Don't lock up the brakes, Thomas. He manages to get it stopped, and up into 9th place he goes, and hopefully can romp away from Hoyland now. But it is very difficult to try and get away from drivers behind, thanks to the endless amount of slipstream at this track. And I can imagine Hoyland will be coming at him very soon, as this is Brandt as well, trying to look ahead at some cars in front. And well, this is what you get at Le Mans, with a huge field of nearly 50 cars just battling constantly up and down the grid. And sometimes it's a tad bit overwhelming to try and just keep up with everything.
Yeah, I gotta feel bad for our producer Joshua to be like a chameleon looking at about 14,000 things at once. At this point in time, though, the battles are up and down the field. It is absolutely insane. That quote didn't even get a laugh out of our producer, because I've said that quote to him about 14,000 times. But nevertheless, the fight's continuing up and down the field. Matt Holyland trying to get the move done. That is not Holyland, that's Hoyland in the DXT Magenta car, heading his way off into Indianapolis. Hoyland, that's probably going to be the name that trips me up throughout the rest of this season. Whenever I see that, I think of many different things. I think we had baseball player from my hometown team, the Philadelphia Phillies, used to have a name very similar to that, so whenever I see that name, I kind of think of that a little bit. But nevertheless, the fight's continuing up and down the field. 48 cars took the start. I believe a vast majority of them are still out there on the racing surface and chucking the laps away. Coming up to the halfway mark in the not-too-distant future as well, so that's going to be a good time to really talk about possibly some more pit stops going on, because that early call from some of the front runners to come down pit lane, no one has really tried to echo their call. So lots of drivers, of course, we do have open setups, so a lot of drivers going for some different fuel strategies, different race strategies altogether. And I'm curious how those drivers that came out of the pits not terribly long ago have exited out in reference to lap traffic, not even lap traffic, just traffic period. Because around this track, still old school in nature despite being a modern, up-to-date racing facility. Not a whole lot of overtaking opportunities available at these drivers' disposal. So if you end up in traffic, you're just going to be in a world of trouble.
Yeah, 100%. You've got to get your way through traffic as quickly as possible. As that's Jonathan Provost coming in as well in the GP2 McLaren machine, as he's another driver to come into the pits. We'll see where he comes out relative to a few other drivers that we've seen come in for their pit stops already. And, well, I think a lot of drivers now probably should start thinking about those pit stops, as we're nearly at the halfway point. We've got about another 5 minutes to go. Another driver coming into the pit lane, I believe. This is Darren Sharples in Old Dudes in Cars. That is a name and a half for a racing team. Fair enough. He comes in as well for his pit stop. And I would imagine that you probably would have to take tyres around here. I'm not quite sure if it's entirely necessary. Some drivers probably think it's a good idea, some probably don't. As Jonathan Provost finishes his pit stop, and his was about 29 seconds. So even he, who I believe took all 4 tyres, was still faster than Fairley in his pit stop. So I definitely am thinking that was a speeding penalty coming in for Andrew, and just trying to be a little bit over optimistic, trying to gain as much time as possible. And I don't think he will be the last driver we'll see today getting a speeding penalty.
We saw a moment that happened not terribly long ago involving, I believe, unless I'm very much mistaken, it was Chris Keenan. So the driver from Belgium has had a moment. We saw his wrecked McLaren down in the pit lane, so not exactly sure what happened to him not terribly long ago. A lot of McLarens up and down the field, it must be said, but I think that may have been the first incident that we've had thus far. Another car possibly involved in that. There's been a lot of drivers have some very close encounters. However, 26 minutes on the clock, haven't had too many big accidents. On my like that, I probably just jinxed it. We're going to see a 14-car pileup heading through our notch in about 5 minutes' time. Some good battling up and down this field still. I think that may have possibly been a 2-car incident. Jeffrey Damon, who we thought didn't take the start. He did take the start, but only completed 5 laps before a possible issue. He and Chris Keenan have run into some trouble. There we can see Chris Keenan's car already in the wall, so not sure what happened to the driver, the number 76 car. It looked like a pretty significant whack. There was a front bumper, looked like it was completely gone.
Well, as much as I would have liked to have seen that replay, you know, my iRacing doing its normal iRacing thing, so thank you iRacing for that lovely replay. But Van Ziest trying to defend from 2 cars at the same time down one straight. This can only end in one way, and surprisingly it hasn't ended in death, which I thought it would have already, as King goes past up into 18th place. I don't think Black was quite close enough there to go for a move, and perhaps being on the safe side, definitely not a bad thing. So just looking at back at the top, Corey Price has lost a couple places, so he's no longer your race leader. He seems to be definitely struggling as the race goes on. And this is the crash from Keenan, and yeah, spinning into the hairpin. Looks like he was just a bit too deep on the brakes. Is he going to come back on the track unsafely? Be careful there, Keenan. No one so far, not a big incident at the moment, so perhaps that was just one tiny moment and something else happened later down the line. But yeah, Keenan obviously struggling as well, he's still sitting in the pits. So here's Luke King, now ahead of these two cars behind Van Seest and Black. And he's definitely struggling to keep ahead of Van Seest. Luckily, going into the last few corners, there's not really an overtaking opportunity here. So he's safe for now, but I have the feeling this three-car battle is going to heat up very, very soon, as we've got a couple more cars in the pits.
Yeah, so more drivers already making that call to come down pit lane. This is really the opportunity to try and do it, as we're going to find, hopefully, the replay. Oh, that was a big whack involving two McLarens heading off into the Dunlop chicane at the very beginning of that lap. That, I believe, was lap 5, possibly, for Keenan. Either way, that was a pretty significant whack. Not sure what in the world happened there. I think the line that I said a few moments ago about there being a pileup heading through Arnage, it wasn't through Arnage, instead it was through the Dunlop chicanes. That looked like a very strange incident. What do you make of that, Aaron?
Yeah, just exactly the same force. It just was very strange, and obviously race ending for Keenan, unfortunately, as well. It can happen just so easily at this track. It's a lot harder than a lot of other people think. You know, most people come into Le Mans thinking, oh, it's only difficult because of the 24 hours, but no, this track just as a whole is very, very difficult to master, and it's very, very exhausting to drive. You just got to be on it a lot of the time, and sure, you can maybe have a tiny break going down the Mulsanne straights, but you know, especially the second half of the lap is so stressful, especially trying to battle with other cars, saving fuel, as that's Tom Weston going up the inside of McKee for 26th place. And I really do love, this is what I like about the GT3s. It's just always just a nice variety in drivers and cars, and it just provides some absolutely amazing racing, which we're seeing at the moment, as this is Peter Black thinking about a move on Van Seest, but again being a little bit cautious, probably just trying to get to his first set of pit stops before he starts going for these types of moves, which is definitely the usual play. As up at the top of the field, it's Lucchesi and Deno Brega who are leading the way 1 and 2. And, well, are they going to battle? They are from the same team, let's not forget. And although they didn't have an amazing qualifying, Deno Brega definitely had the better one out of the two. Their race pace showing absolute levels above most of the rest of the field, as they're going nearly a full second quicker than some of the other drivers who you would call quick, you know, drivers in 5th, 6th. But look at that, Deno Brega 57.1, which on average is about a second and a half quicker than the rest of the field, and a half a second quicker than the next nearest car. So these two up front really are setting the pace for not just the rest of the field, but possibly for the rest of the season.
I'm trying to look at the front end of that race car. Either the bodywork on these McLarens just don't fit at all, or there's a little bit of damage on the front of Tristan Deno Brega's car, heading his way through the Porsche curves. It doesn't really seem to affect him too much. But these two, part of the same team, part of that RDSA esports team, they were teammates last season. And of course, last season, we saw Luke Lucchesi take this second championship in as many seasons. Won the championship in Season 4, won the championship in Season 5, looking to try and go for the three-peat here in Season 6. That was Price coming into the pits a little bit farther in the back, just caught that in the corner of my eye. So he's come into the pits along with Bearing, so an interesting call from those two, one in a BMW, another in a Porsche, both of them running towards the front end of the field. They have now made that call to come down pit lane along with Pugh. So more drivers assigned to come in to the pits. We're over the halfway mark now of this 1 hour race, and I have the feeling that that small little trickle of drivers coming down pit lane may turn into a flood in the not too distant future.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with you. We're kind of getting to that point now where most drivers are going to have to come in for their pit stop, and it does look like tyres are going to be, I wouldn't say mandatory, but definitely the way to go. I do think some drivers thinking better of it, but it's going to be interesting because tyres do lose you a lot of time in the pit stops, as we know, and you just got to kind of weigh up, is it worth it, you know, losing a lot of time in the pits? Can I make that up with these fresh set of tyres? You know, will I have the pace? As Corey Price coming out of the pits now, your former race leader, and now down into 23rd place. You can definitely tell where some drivers have been saving fuel, some drivers haven't. And honestly, I'm with you, Ron. I think this next lap is probably going to be the last for the drivers who still have some fuel left in the tank. And I don't think we're going to see anyone go an extra lap purely just because of how long this track is.
Yeah, and I'm curious as to whether or not the front two in this race of Luke Lucchesi and Tristan Denabrega will come down pit lane. Of course, they are teammates, so you would expect it. However, I have seen stranger things in my time doing some iRacing broadcasts, following Stephen Donnelly, who's gotten himself involved in a close fight between himself and Lundbrook coming out of the pits. Lundbrook, the driver in the Evo category. Donnelly, one of the drivers in the Premier category. He's currently running down in 40th overall at the moment. And Stephen Donnelly is off the back of a second place championship result just one season ago behind another teammate, that being Joe Sbarra, who I believe was a driver that had that major bit of drama heading off into the Dunlop chicane earlier on in the race. He was behind the wheel of the BMW, unless I'm very much mistaken, that came in flying like a bat out of hell and nearly body slammed the Porsche off the racetrack. That's still unbelievable to me, seeing that BMW go off the track at the rate of speed it was going. I was fully expecting them to go off in a cloud of dust and steam, but nevertheless, some battling still continuing up and down this field. That is right now a fight involving De Vries, so one of the drivers that was up towards the front of this race, running, I believe, in P4 when he decides to come down pit lane, running in P4 in the elite category. So the driver of the 213 got himself involved in a pretty close fight between himself and the driver right behind one of the Evo drivers. And you can see that battle may have gone for a 2-for-1 deal heading into the second chicane down that Mulsanne straightaway, backed out of it a little bit, then went for the move, a sneaky move from Alice De Vries in the 213 ART sim racing car. So well done for him. That was a pretty well executed move.
Yeah, that was an absolutely fantastic move going into the second chicane down the Mulsanne straight, and he got the place. And I mean, just listening to that Audi, I mean, they just don't make engines like that anymore. You just have to love a V10 screaming at the top of its lungs. And well, the V10 will be dearly missed, as I believe Audi retired the R8. I think it's this year that they're retiring it, or it was sometime last year. Either way, that car will be dearly missed, as Lucchesi and Denabrega still going for another lap. So it looks like I was wrong, and these guys either are masters at fuel saving, or the rest of the grid are terrible at fuel saving. I don't know which one it is, but still, couple drivers still going at it, still chugging away at the laps, and possibly these guys could go all the way until we've got about 15 minutes left in this race. We'll have to wait and see. But definitely, you would say, like, the top 15 at the moment, still chugging away on their fuel, and definitely doing a superb job saving just litres of fuel every lap, as Brooks has come into the pits, as has Brown behind him, and I think a couple other cars behind them as well will be coming in. But the top 9, still, none of them coming in for their pit stops. And is it going to be next lap? Is it going to be the lap after? I don't know. They've all just magically managed to go a lot longer than the rest of the field.
Yeah, I think some of the drivers feeling oh so confident in the pace in their race cars may just be able to lift off heading into the corners. I'm curious after we see a lot of these other drivers come down pit lane, including Alex Fretwell in the Racing League Hub number 252 car. He's coming in right towards the tail end of the top 20 in that Lamborghini. Gotta say, a lot of Lamborghinis up and down this grid. I got also talking about some other GT3 broadcasts I've done here on Apex Racing TV. Don't really see the Lamborghini being run all too much. I think with the retirement of the McLaren in favor for the brand new 720S, so we're seeing Ashley Brooks exit the pits in right now. I believe the Lamborghini may possibly be the oldest and most venerated GT3 car on the iRacing platform, because that car's been around for a little while. Of course, some people used to drive in Super Trofeo races in that car, so gotta say, a lot newer in terms of the batch of GT3 machinery that we have in the iRacing world now. To make anyone feel old tuning into this broadcast, I was actually doing a little bit of research and trying to figure out when the MP4-12C, the old McLaren GT3, was introduced into iRacing. iRacing posted a video about that car way back in 2012. We'll talk about that in a little bit. It's a swap for the lead between Denabrega and Luke Lucchesi heading down the Mulsanne straightaway into Mulsanne corner itself. So the two drivers, both part of the RDSA esports team, deciding to swap positions. An interesting call from them. Not sure if it was just... Ooh, I'm curious, maybe if Luke Lucchesi has been leading and kind of punching that hole in the air, I wonder if it's just these two swapping to get a little bit better fuel mileage.
Maybe they're just bored up at the front of the field. It could be a possibility that they've just thought, let's just swap positions. Why not? We've got nothing else to do. As they seem to be definitely the stars of the field. But Ryan Oaten's as well doing really, really well. He currently has the fastest lap of the race. The only driver in the 56s all race long. So that also could be down to just people fuel saving, tyre saving, blah, blah, blah. You get the idea. So a lot of different variables, and I don't think we'll see the true pace of most drivers until we get to those like final 2 laps probably. As well, maybe some people thinking to fuel save the entire race, going a bit timid, other people maybe struggling on tyres. But at the moment, this is the leader in the Premier class, Nick Stube, in 8th place currently. He has not come in for his pit stop yet, but I imagine, you know, I mean, we've said this almost every lap. I think these guys will be coming into the pits this lap, and then they don't. They always prove us wrong. So, honestly, it's a complete guess at the moment when these guys are going to come into the pits, and it could be this lap, it could be next lap. Stay tuned to find out how long one GT3 car can stay out on one tank. As Brandt struggling a little bit on the exit, trying to defend from Bearings and DeFries. I don't imagine he's defending, but letting them by eagerly. I don't think he wants to get involved in this battle, as DeFries and Bearings have kind of been going at it for most of this race, and that should be one to watch all the way until the end, as ACOG now coming in as well from 6th place, as the top 5 still going. So honestly, I do not know when they're going to come into the pits. It could be this lap, it could be next lap, who knows.
Yeah, I think they're going to play us like a fiddle and maybe come into the pits in 3 laps time just to try and prove us wrong. But I'm curious, when it comes to that fight in the Premier category, as Jones, who is running P2 in class, has now come in, currently running P9 overall. I'm curious how Stuba is going to shake out in reference to Price, who's running down in 18th. Price, of course, had that blistering start, which is quite possibly illegal. However, there's no race control to slap him over the wrist with a penalty, and he hasn't received a penalty as a result. My question is, will Stuba actually be able to exit out in front of Price, because he spent 1 minute and 19.9 seconds down in pit lane. Jones, meanwhile, he is still in his pit stall. There you can see he's now exiting out and away. So Matthew Jones, another Premier driver. Let's see how he exits out in terms of his time down pit lane. Coming up to it now, 1 minute 0.1 compared to Price at 1 minute 11.9. So I think with Stube staying all the way out up until the final 20 minutes of this race, he very well may be able to come into the pits and exit out with a lead in the Premier category. That would be a heartbreaker for Price, who we thought was possibly in contention for an overall victory as well.
Yeah, I just think maybe his decision to take tyres has cost Price a lot of time, as this is Robin Astin going wheel to wheel with Kostrick behind, as Kostrick, I believe, was potentially on the attack there, as Aston just trying to get away. He's obviously one of the drivers who have come into the pits. Pretty much everyone from about 17th downwards has come into the pits, apart from a few drivers. It's pretty much just everyone from like 15th up, apart from 3, who haven't come into the pits yet. So we're just patiently waiting for those guys to join the queue and come in for their pit stops. I think the top drivers definitely are just going to take fuel. I think taking tyres has cost drivers just too much time in this race. So, you know, it adds probably an extra 5 or 10 seconds. As who was that who just blipped out of existence? Someone has just towed back to the pits, and I believe that might have been Luke King, who was running, I think, up in like 8th place, and has suddenly just gone back to the pits.
So, yeah, King has come down pit lane. Jeffrey Dahman, meanwhile, who got involved in an incident earlier, I think he's towed back to the pits, along with Tom Weston, who's still in his pit stall, currently running down in 47th at this very point in the race. Gotta say, Chris Keenan, who we saw involved in that incident hang through the Dunlop chicane, he has rejoined the race, albeit he is down in last and spent, let me do the quick maths here, that would be 27 minutes down in his pit stall, so a pretty slow pit stop when everything is said and done. I'm pretty sure there was Grand Prix races back in the 1920s where drivers had shorter pit stop times compared to him, trying to fix that major damage on that race car, which is a little bit of a shock because these drivers are meant to have a fast repair at their hands, but nevertheless 27 minutes, I should say, down in the pit lane. Corey Price, meanwhile, who was our at 1 point leader overall and our at 1 point leader in the Premier category, he's running down in 15th at the moment, currently 4th in the class as it stands currently. Stubb, McGee, and Woolsey have yet to come down into the pit lane, but Price, with a pretty good amount of speed, just got moved on Turf Grueler heading down. That was heading through in that small little flat out blast between Mulsanne and Indianapolis as Matt Hoyland has now come down the pits in the 223 DXT Magenta car, along with Ryan Odens in the Alpha 1 Esports car and Luke Van Gortel in the MGK Sim Racing entry. So some more drivers running inside the top 10, making that call to come down pit lane. It's just a matter of time before our leaders come in too.
I mean, surely it has to be this lap, right? I can't imagine they can go another lap on this tank, and I just know they will, because every single lap I've said this, they will just do another lap because they just magically have another few litres in that fuel tank. But they've been not only quick in this race, but quick saving fuel as well, which is probably the big thing. You know, being quick overall is one thing, but most of the time in GTPs, in GT3s, you just have to be a good fuel saver to get the most out of these. Unless you are just 5 seconds quicker than the rest of the field, then yeah, fair enough, you can do what you want. But you know, in a series like this, and that was the bounciest hood I've ever seen from one of those Porsches. I believe it was Ryan Woosley there, the 181 car, who came into the pits with a bit of damage. And I believe these guys do get a fast repair in this race. I could be wrong on that, but definitely helpful for these guys coming into the pits to get their cars fixed and get back out there.
And we saw Roald Turfroiler coming down pit lane. That pronunciation is probably incorrect. I apologize for him. There we go. The driver of the number 20 car. And every single time I see him on our live timing tower, I kind of get a little bit of fright or flight in a way, and mainly because it's one letter away from being my own name, so I'm looking at that being like, ooh, and then just kind of moving on from that. And speaking of moving on, we'll talk about the driver, the number 47 BMW that we're seeing heading its way off through the S's towards the beginning of this lap. That's Joe Sbarra, who we saw have that major moment hang through the Dunlop chicane earlier on. He's currently running down in 27th. And is the driver who's been pretty fast in this series in the past. Got a fight going on between Ruben Behrings. He's now going side by side, heading off into the corner with De Vries. One of those drivers have to back out, and it's going to be Ruben Behrings backing out that smartly so, heading off into the second chicane down that Mulsanne straightaway, because that would have ended an absolute disaster if those two went side by side. The both of them were attacking that corner with a decent amount of anger. So I think if those drivers start to risk it just a little bit more, which, hey, we're coming towards the end of the race, certainly wouldn't rule it out. That would certainly end in tears as some more side by side a little bit farther in the back with my doppelganger of Roald Turfroiler in the MJK Sim Racing blue car. That was a mouthful. I think I will never try repeating those words in that order before, because I think if I do, my tongue will probably get wrapped around itself about 14 times.
I think it's fine. MGK Sim Racing Blue, MGK Sim Racing Blue, MGK Sim Racing Blue. I can say it perfectly fine. Maybe there's something wrong. Ron, I don't know. Maybe you can't pronounce the word MGK. Don't know. MJK.
MJK, there we go.
But either way, it doesn't matter. And yes, Dano Braga finally coming into the pits along with Lucchesi behind, and surely Brayton Back has to come in as well, 6 seconds behind. And finally, we will get every single driver in the field coming in for their pit stops, and it's going to be a good, comparison for the rest of the field, seeing if these guys do take tires, if just how long their pit stops are in general, how much fuel they've saved. Looks like there's a tiny bit of damage on the front of Dano Braga's car as well, so he definitely is going to be able to get that fixed, as he takes to his pit stop, and yes, that was a fair amount of damage on that McLaren actually, as some parts of the back as well seem to be repaired, so maybe limiting his performance slightly. Not sure how much slower he'd be going with that damage, but anyway, we get a good look at how short their pit stops are, and yeah, 14 seconds for Denner Brager, 13 for Lucchesi, 14 for Breitenbach, so yep, no tyres from any of the top guys, just fuel, and I definitely think that's going to be the strat going into the rest of the season, as Le Mans is usually a higher tyre wear track, so if you can get away with it here, you can kind of get away with it at most other tracks.
Ooh, and I think we aren't really going to have a fight on our hands in the Premier category. Stube is still exiting the pits right now. He is going to be right behind Price, so we actually have a fight on our hands in the Premier category. I was going to say I wasn't entirely confident about Price being able to exit out and have that pit cycle go his way and still maintain the lead in the Premier category. However, Price and Stube have swapped positions. There you can see Corey Price in the 131 GHR K1 esports car. There we go, second complicated name for a team, and I actually got it right this time by. He's currently running 11th overall. The driver who began this race with a jump start of a century. Looks like he's not going to get hit with a penalty. However, if he did, it would be this man, Nick Stube, another Dutchman in the 169 Glass Tech racing car. He would be the one inheriting the win in the Premier category, and also wrapping a small little bow around the storyline surrounding the Evo class. Gotta say, things have worked out pretty good for Noel Brown. Actually, no, it's looking good for Brooks at the moment, the driver that we saw involved in that pretty close call coming out of the Porsche curves earlier on. I believe he's now taking the lead in the Evo category, so that would be a pretty big change of fortune for him. I don't remember who the driver was that we saw leading in that class. Here's Ashley Brooks in the 19 car, the driver from the UK, currently running down at 16th overall. Got a fight on his hands, though, between himself and Noel Brown. That may be a fight between now and the checkered flag for those two battling in the Evo category for the win in that class. Gotta take a look at a replay to see some of the drama that's been going on throughout this race, and this was a drama deciding the leader at this point in time in the Evo category. Ashley Brooks got a move put on him, heading down the hill into the S's, but a big moment for Noel Edwards. That I believe was the old Tomorrow's World presenter, actually old Top Gear presenter, my apologies. Actually, Brooks was able to get the move done on him, and that was, I believe, unless I'm very much mistaken, trying to negotiate the live timing tower, it was Robin Noel Brown. So Noel Edwards, I believe, was the old BBC Top Gear commentator way back in like 1980 or something, but nevertheless, those two drivers still close at the moment. Not a whole lot of time between the two of them currently, so we could see a fight on our hands between the two drivers battling for the first checkered flag this season in the Evo category. And as I pass it off to you, Aaron, I'm going to try and figure out what in the world happened to the driver that was leading in Evo earlier.
Yeah, not a bad shout, as we do follow Robin Brown following the back of Brooks as well. This should be a good battle. We've got about 8.5 minutes left to go in this race, and well, are they going to cross the line in time to get another lap in? Denner Brager and Lucchesi obviously being the stars of the field so far, and my question is, are they going to be allowed to fight? They're obviously part of the same team, but I know they've got a long season ahead of them. Are they going to be allowed to fight for the championship, or is it going to favour one driver? We will wait and see. As Liam Kelso down in 20th place. He's got a couple places to make up if he wants to fight for the lead in the Evo class, but at the moment he's third, which I definitely think he would take a podium at the moment, as he's got a couple cars ahead of him in this battle with Robin Astin, as there's about a 4-car battle here. You've got a couple seconds back to the likes of McKee and Bostock and Sapara as well. And that was very, very deep for, I believe it was Van Ziest, who got very, very close to the outside wall there at Arnage, and you definitely do not want to be caught doing that, as that can be very, very easily race-ending if you do get it wrong. And perhaps maybe these last few minutes going to be a little bit quiet until we do get onto that white flag, as people just waiting for those opportunities to come into their way. We're watching Brandon as well, trying to attack Sparza, as we saw his amazing save earlier on at turn 2, as he's still going fairly strong in 25th place, just about above halfway into the field as Van Ziest getting overtaken, I believe, by Kostrick into the final few corners. That's possibly a mistake there from Van Ziest. We saw him struggle down into Arnage, so maybe the Porsche driver just struggling in this last stint of the race.
Yeah, possibly. We're going to take a look at a replay to see one of the struggles for one of the Porsche drivers, the MJK Sim Racing car. And you said MGK there at the very beginning. The 225 having a moment, running very wide up into the tire barrier, coming out of Arnage. That was a very close call for the driver there. Thankfully, they avoid some sort of major drama that would have definitely thrown a bad wrench in the works for how they were attempting to tackle the final 8-ish minutes of this race. Only 6 minutes left on the clock at this very point in time, and we may have a fight on our hands between Tristan Dennebrega and his teammates of Lucchesi. Lucchesi, the reigning two-time champion in the elite category, right behind his teammate at this point. In full transparency, folks, the race admins were telling us before this broadcast earlier on today that these two were probably going to be a little bit closer than they have in previous seasons, considering the fact that we are running an open setup series for the first time in the history of the Evolution Sim Racing GT3 Championship. At this point in time, we could see a fight on our hands, and Aaron, you brought up a very good point when it comes to this fight. Will their team let them fight? Of course, they're both part of the RDSA esports team, so will they actually be allowed to go side by side is the real question.
Well, is Lucchesi going to get close enough to even think about getting side by side, as it seems like Dennebrega has the pace on his teammate at the moment, as well, Lucchesi has the fastest lap out of the pair of them, as Oaten's actually is fairly close in terms of quick lap times compared to these two, but obviously is 8 seconds away from the leading two. So you really do have to ask, what on earth were Dennebrega and Lucchesi hiding in their back pocket? As I can remember, so like 20 minutes they, you know, sort of in like 7th. I think Dennebrega was in 3rd. And they kind of just came out of nowhere. And oh, that's a spin behind. Is that Andrew Fairley?
Yes, it is. That's Fairley going for a spin in the ADX Racing Esports car, the 246 driver, backing it into the wall on the outside of Indianapolis there as well. He has had an up and down day for sure. Was involved in a battle for the lead, but was one of the first drivers to come down pit lane. And ever since then, things have unraveled for him. I honestly think that strategy call for the drivers that came down in the early stages, it just has not worked for them. I thought for a second that Tristan Dennebrega was going to be coming back down pit lane. They're just trying to use all the asphalt that's available to him, setting himself up nicely, heading his way into the Ford chicanes for what could be one of the last times. We have less than 4 minutes left on the clock. I believe they may be coming to white flag next time by, but Dennebrega and Lucchesi, whether it be a whole lot of pace, whether it be a nitrous bottle, whether it be an extra gallon or two of gas that they kept in their back pockets, is left to be determined, but they have just kicked on the hyperjets throughout this race and are on track to finish P1 and P2 unless some sort of major drama happens, and they would do it with the next closest car about 8.5 seconds a little bit farther in the back. I think we may have had a replay to take a look. Some of the drivers that may have had some off-track moments hang a little bit farther in the back. That's A-List de Vries, the driver of the ART Sim Racing 213 car. That's hanging his way through the Corvette curbs and just pulling off the track there. What happened there? He stops. He's back on his way. I mean, we could say that he's a very popular driver. Ooh, yeah, possibly a technical issue. I was going to say that he may be a very popular driver and had to pull over to the side of the racetrack to sign some autographs. He's careened his way down the running order. He's currently 45th at the moment, so I think there may have been some sort of major penalty. He pulled into the pits, according to our producer, so that's a pretty big issue for the driver who was battling and dicing quite hard towards the end of this race. However, things have sadly not worked out well for him. And touching on a storyline that I was going to bring up not terribly long ago, involving the at one point leader in the Evo category, that being Stefano Gattuso in the 42 Ferrari. He's dropped down to 31st at this point in time, down 23 spots from where he started in this race. Not sure exactly how he ended up far down there, but he has not had a good run of things in this race. Still showing some pretty decent pace. Either it's a butchered strategy call from him, or maybe some sort of added drama for the driver, the number 42. But for the driver that started this race up towards the front and was running up towards the front, I believe was running as high as second overall earlier on. The driver in the Evo entry has had a torrid time of things in this race, and I think this may be a replay of something that happened to him a little bit earlier on.
Yeah, this is going through the Porsche curves, a notoriously difficult part of the track, and just dipped a wheel onto the inside of the grass, and it just upset the car enough to send him round and into the wall, and that was a fairly hefty hit. But actually, that's 296 Ferrari held up a lot better than I thought it would, and that was a fairly hefty impact into the wall, and it held up, you know, like a brick. So fair enough. Ferrari definitely building their cars very, very strongly, in GT3s at least. And, well, this is the battle for the lead. Looks a little bit squirrely on entry for Dana Brega. But is this going to be it? Are they going to be allowed to fight? Lucchesi has been catching over the last lap and a half. Is this going to be white flag as well? Or will we just about have enough time to do another lap? We'll wait and see, as Lucchesi isn't quite close enough to go in for a move into the Porsche curves. And in these last few corners, there's not really an overtaking opportunity. So this is just going to be Lucchesi staring at the back of that McLaren 720S, patiently just waiting for an opportunity. And I believe this is going to be, yeah, this is going to be the checkered flag. And that was unexpected.
5 seconds left. Yeah, 5 seconds left on the clock. About to run out of this 1 hour race right about now. So only a few more corners left to go for the duo that started this race inside the top 10. And they're going to make their way around the final chicane. And it's going to be Tristan Dana Brega taking the victory when everything is said and done. His teammate and reigning multi-time champion finishes right in tow in P2. So that was very close towards the end. If it was another like 15 to 25 seconds, that would have been another lap around. That's a big thing when it comes to these timed races, is you can have some pretty bad luck fall your way if you get that strategy call just a little bit wrong. A driver that had a fantastic start, he may pick up a penalty from race control in the upcoming few days. We'll certainly touch on that when the series returns in 1 week's time. Corey Price, though, is going to be taking the checkered flag, the top finishing premier driver on the racetrack. However, Stu finishing right behind, riding at your top 10 overall, finishes second in the category on track. However, he may be promoted to a victory if there are some start violation penalties heading the way of Price. Meanwhile, we look a little bit farther in the back, Ashley Brooks in the number 19 car going to be riding his way heading into the Ford chicane for the final time. Blinking Av existed very briefly. Hopefully he doesn't have any more disconnect issues between now and the checkered flag, which is coming up in a matter of feet for him. Finishing this race in P15, but finishing at the front of the Evo category, Ashley Brooks, the Brit in the brand new McLaren, going to take the checkered flag in front of Robin Noel Brown in the Kaizen GP2 Porsche. The number 22 driver finishes right behind in 16th. But that was very, very close. I mean, we thought that was 2 more laps for Dana Brega and Lucchesi, but it turned out to be only 1 more lap time around. But well done to Dana Brega, really well done to the both of them for putting on a very well-managed race and finishing nearly 10 seconds in front of the next car around them.
Yeah, they were very, very quick, but not quite quick enough to go for another lap. And unfortunately, well, no, not unfortunately, they got a 1-2. What am I on about? It's a good result for the team, but maybe Lucchesi, had he had a bit of a better qualifying, he could have been up there fighting for the win for more of that race, as you know, we went into that second to last lap just with him a couple, I think it was nearly a second behind, as we're seeing what happened to Hussein as we saw him come across the line without a rear wing, which is quite an important part of your Lamborghini. It's probably the only thing keeping the rear of that car in check, as it's quite squirrely enough as it is, let alone without a rear wing. So fair play to getting to the end of their race, as all the drivers now in unison, just going down the Molson straight just to have a bit of a chill.
Yeah, so as these drivers start to cool off after 1 hour of racing action, I will attempt the name of that Lamborghini that we just saw having that moment hang through the first of the 2 Mulsanne chicanes. That was Hussein Sarakadelser. There we go. We'll go with that pronunciation. Who backed it into the wall, that Lamborghini. It's pretty nice to see a decent amount of Lamborghinis up and down the field. This is probably the most amount of Lamborghinis I've been able to commentate on for quite some time. Some contact even under the yellow flag conditions at the end of this race. Some drivers just hoping to get back to pit lane when everything is said and done. I believe, unless I'm very much mistaken, all the cars have now seen the checkered flag in this opening race of this season. Yeah, as you can see, the field pacing around the racetrack, trying to get their way back to pit lane. I think we may have some results to look over in the not-too-distant future. I think there's only a few more cars left to not take the checkered flag at this point in time, so we're going to wait for them to be able to do such a thing, possibly running out of fuel, which could be the reason why it's been so long. I believe it's Bearings. Yeah, the driver yet to take the checkered flag at this point in time. He's still out there on the racetrack, though. Not sure exactly why it's taken him a little bit longer compared to everybody else to actually take the checkered flag in this race. 4 wide formation with some of the Porsches heading down the Mulsanne straightaway. So if we saw that in the race, I feel like I would have had a freaking heart attack, because we nearly saw some 3-wide action heading down the start-finish straightaway off into the Dunlop chicane, but 4-wide action heading down that back Mulsanne straight. That probably would have sent me overboard, but a fantastic way to kick this season off. One of the few 1-hour races that we have from this season. We went over the schedule before, and we've only got, it's not all 1-hour races, folks. We've got the next one being at Barcelona in 2 weeks' time, followed by one at Montreal 2 weeks after that, and that's only one more between then and the end of the season, that being at Fuji on November the 14th, all of which are going to be streamed exclusively here on Apex Racing TV. Really happy to have this series on board, and based off the action that we saw from this race, a really intriguing racing from start to finish, as well as some pretty good strategy content thrown in. Fantastic way to kick this season off. I think we do have some results to take a look at when everything is said and done. At least this time by, unlike when we were taking a look at the starting grid, we don't have too much of a back timer in the back of our minds, so we can take a little bit more time to go through this instead of just burning through and waiting for the drivers to get their races underway. The race is now over, and everything is said and done. It's Tristan Dennebrega in the 270 car, the RDSA esports team finishing P1 and P2. Dennebrega finishing in first, and Lucchesi finishing right behind him, P2. Only 3.5 tenths of a second between the two of those drivers when everything is said and done. And that's the Alpha 1 esports car of Ryan Odens running at your podium in third. That's going to be Brainbach an up and down race. He's going to be finishing this race in P4. Luke Van Gortel going to be finishing in 5th. Ruben Bearings ends up in 6th. Matt Hoyland finishing in P7. Richard Acock finishes in P8. Well done from the Brit. Then it's 2 Dutch drivers running at your top 10, and 2 drivers in the Premier category. Corey Price taking the first checkered flag of the Premier drivers in this season. However, as we saw that replay, there may be a penalty heading his way for the shenanigans at the very start, but on track at least he ends up winning it when everything is said and done. Nick Stube going to be finishing right behind in P10, running at your top 10, P2 in the Premier category. That's going to be Thomas Pugh finishing this race in 11th, Andrew Farley in 12th, Corey Maxim ends up this race in P13, Matthew Jones in 14th, and then our winner in the Evo category is going to be Ashley Brooks, the Brit behind the wheel of that McLaren, gonna finish at P15 overall in the number 19 car. Right behind him is another Evo competitor, that being Robin Noel Brown, who finishes in P16, Jonathan Provost gonna be finishing this race in 17th, Liam Kelso in P18, Robin Aston finishing this race in 19th, and Scott Kostrick going to round out your top 20.
And the rest of the field, as we begin from 25th place, Rob McKee having a pretty good race actually from his side of things. and he ended up finishing 11 places up from where he started. A lot of drivers today doing a really, really good job. And, well, the rest of the grid is as follows, as Van Zeest in 22nd place, Bostock in 23rd, Fretwell in 24th, Sparza in 25th place, Woosley in 26th, Brandon in 27th, Peter Black in 28th, Darren Sharples in 29th, I honestly, I'm going to butcher some of these names, I do apologise. Turf Crewer in 30th place, in 31st is Stefan Gattuso, 32nd is Danny Weir, in 33rd is Hussein Sarek Kardesler. I definitely got that wrong. I'm so sorry. 34th is Stefan Donnelly. 35th is Martin Koch. 36th is Luke King. 37th is Gareth Newton. 38th is John Ludbrook. 39th is James Pallett. 40th is Sean Clark. And then your final 8 drivers, some of which had a bit of a tough time from 48th downwards, is going to be Mark Wesley in 41st, Malcolm Coates in 42nd, Breck Bearings in 43rd, De Vries in 44th. Real shame how his race ended. He was doing a brilliant job throughout the whole thing, and he definitely could be a driver to watch for the rest of the season. Sean McCalling in 45th, Tom Weston in 46th, Jeffrey Darman in 47th, and Chris Keenan in 48th place in last, 10 laps down. Oh, what a grid. What a day. What an amazing day of racing.
Yeah, it was an absolutely fantastic day of racing, and we actually have a driver waiting in the interview waiting area. That driver being the one that finished in P2 when everything is said and done, the reigning 2-time champion in the series, that being Luke Lucchesi. We'll have a chat with him right now, dragging him into the commentary booth. And now Mr. Lucchesi, well done on a pretty good result when everything is said and done, finishing P2 in the opening race of this season, right behind your teammate. Talk us through it.
Yeah, look, I think that was the best possible result for tonight, the top end that McLaren has. So, yeah, I didn't really have a choice but to sit in the toe. But a big factor was slowdowns, and I think the pit strategy is where we got the P1 and 2, because I think we planned it perfectly. So we fueled basically as full as we could, and then try to save fuel where we could. And yeah, I think other people pitted early and took tires, which we didn't have to take because we only took about 24 liters of fuel, which wouldn't cover tires. But also, I mean, there's 3 laps left of the race at that stage, so you can't really make a difference with new tires.
I'm sure it was a lot going through your mind trying to figure out how exactly to tackle this race, especially with the change that we've had this season with the open setups. I won't ask you about your setup wizardry that led to you and your teammate being incredibly quick in this opening race of the season. However, I will ask you about the challenges about having a setup to try and cook up heading into these races.
Well, I mean, we've got the Apex Racing setups as a base, so that definitely helps. So we just have to do minor tweaks. I think the challenge at Le Mans with the Porsche is getting the rear end not to break away through Porsche curves. The rest of the lap is pretty good. But yeah, so I think a P2 at this track, which I don't think is the Porsche's strongest track, by quite a margin. So I think it's a good result. It's a good team result. Yeah, and yeah, we've played it well, I think.
I think you guys certainly played it out very, very well, taking the checkered flag P1 and P2 when everything is said and done from the opening race of this season. Going to be heading to Indy in 1 week's time, racing on the Yard of Bricks on October the 3rd here on Apex Racing TV. Going to have 2 30-minute races to tackle heading into that race. What are your thoughts heading into that?
I think the Porsche is better suited to that circuit than this. So yeah, I expect the pace to be a bit better. Also, I think what's going to decide the results there is going to be the reverse grid, because there's no pit stops. There's no chance to pit early and undercut everybody else if you have more pace. So you just have to try and make an overtake. And at Indy, it's not too easy. We'll just have to play it by ear and see what happens. But yeah, we'll start building a setup already and see how we get on.
Well, excited to see you back out on the racetrack for the rest of the season and back out on the racetrack at Indy in just 1 week's time. This was a fantastic race for our first with this series here on Apex Racing TV, and of course coming into this as a reigning 2-time champion in the top class here with this series. I'm sure you're chomping at the bit to get the rest of the season underway, but before we let you go and celebrate this P2 result to kick the season off, is there anyone you want to give a thanks to or shout out?
Yeah, look, just a big thanks to my team, my teammates, my parents for watching every stream. They don't miss one. And our sponsors, Sparko. And the rest of the sponsors, Sparko, the team, Spirit Invest. Everyone that has a role to play in the racing. And to you guys, obviously, for the good commentary.
Oh, well, thank you for the kind words, man. We appreciate it. We've definitely got a lot to learn heading into this season, but I think myself, Aaron, and our producer, Josh, are very much looking forward to the rest of this season here on Apex Racing TV. But Mr. Lucchesi, congratulations on the P2 result. When everything is said and done, excited to see you back out on the racetrack for the rest of the season, man. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks very much.
And that was Luke Lucchesi, who ends up leaving this race with a P2 result. And Aaron, I think we have his teammate Tristan Denobrega waiting in the the interview waiting area. So would you like to have a chat with him?
Yeah, of course I would. I'd love to have a chat with our eventual race winner, Denobrega. I mean, what can I say? That was an absolutely amazing performance by you. I mean, maybe it was a bit of a shock at the start with Corey Price just blasting off into the distance, but you had some great pace and eventually came away with the win. How does that feel?
Yeah, hey guys, nice to be on Apex Racing TV, and thanks for the awesome stream so far. Yeah, the race start obviously got pole, so the car looks good at this track, and yeah, the race start, obviously some guys new to the series not sure on the rules yet, and yeah, so we in this league don't go on green. It's up to when the poleman from green till basically the race line, when he decides to go, and when he goes then the rest of the field can go. So yeah, we had Corey go obviously on green and just went straight down the middle, and I think he went from P10 to P1, which was quite exciting. And then yeah, there was a few other guys also that got caught out by it, so I just played the patient game. I think also my slowdown on lap 1 didn't help, so I dropped back to about P7. But yeah, I knew I had pace in the car, so just stayed in the train, and yeah, we worked it off one by one. And then yeah, managed to hit the front with my teammate, which was ideal. And then together we just worked together, and the strategy paid out. And yeah, running long seemed to be the way to go. And when we came out, yeah, we were quite far ahead. And yeah, 1-2 for the night is fantastic. So very happy.
Yeah, I don't blame you at all. It's pretty much went perfectly to plan for you and Lucchesi. Just one question, because I did notice a couple drivers being a bit iffy about this. Was tyres a bit of a struggle? We saw some people taking tyres. We saw the likes of you and Lucchesi opting not to. Was that something you needed to worry about, or was no tyres definitely the way to go today?
Yeah, so I feel like the McLaren is very kind on its tyres, so I was comfortable not taking tyres. I know Luke, especially after the pit stop, he's struggling a lot for front end grip. So for him it was a bit touch and go, but obviously with the strategy we were running, he knew that he needed to stay with me to keep in the tow, to have any hope of maybe fighting at the end with me. So yeah, he struggled a bit on it, and the McLaren was beautiful all race long. I think a lot goes down to the setups with these open setups. Yeah, if you can have a setup that's consistent and kind on the tires, I think it helps you in the long run.
Yeah, definitely. With this new open setup, it definitely does add a little bit more strategy to it. And, well, the McLaren looking beautiful, both feeling and, well, it just looks so damn good, especially at the front of the field. So, but heading into the next round, I believe it's Barcelona. I could be completely wrong on that, but I think it is Barcelona in 2 weeks' time. How are you feeling for that track compared to Le Mans?
I actually think it might be Indy Road.
Oh, then, well, there you go. I know nothing.
And when it comes, is it Indy Road? There we go.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I actually haven't ever driven that track on iRacing, so that'll be interesting. That'll be a challenge, and yeah, I look forward to new tracks, and let's see what happens. I think the McLaren will be all right there, and yeah, if we can get a decent setup, hopefully we can hang with the front pack again.
Yeah, here's hoping that you can have a similar result next time out. It's not Barcelona. Honestly, I don't know how I got that wrong, but yeah, Indy Road is an interesting track. Have fun. It's great. Yeah, it's going to be so much fun. But before we let you go, enjoy this victory, Tristan. Anyone you want to give a shout out to?
Yeah, so I just want to say thank you to my teammate. We've been racing with ESR since season 2 together. I managed to win season 2 as the champion. He's won the last 2, so been a good run for us. Also, we've won a couple of the team championships as well. So yeah, I always enjoyed racing with him. So to Luke, thank you for the racing again tonight. And then yeah, to all our sponsors, to RDSA Esports, to Racing Spirit, to Warwick Wealth, Sparko, Spirit Invest. Yeah, there's a whole lot. Ravenol. We really appreciate their support, and yeah, we really are fortunate to represent them. So thanks to them.
Well, thank you for coming, having a chat with us, Tristan, and congratulations on your first victory of the season. Here's hoping it's not the last one. Go celebrate it, go enjoy it, and good luck for the rest of the season.
Really appreciate it, guys, and it was great to meet you. And yeah, maybe we'll chat soon.
And that right there was Tristan Denabrega, who ends up sneaking away from this first race of the season with a victory. Well done to both of those drivers, the two teammates ending up P1 and P2 when everything is said and done. I'm sure they're very happy heading into the next race of the season. And now, Aaron, I will not fault you entirely. The next 1 hour race of this season is going to be at Barcelona in just 1 week's time. But we're going to have two 30-man races on our hands at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway road course in just 1 week's time, streamed exclusively here on Apex Racing TV. So how do you think that race is going to be?
Well, it's going to be a lot different to this race. I mean, not only is the track completely different, obviously, it's well going to be, like you said, that 30-minute format instead. People are going to have different mindsets going into those races. And like I said to Tristan, I'm not the biggest fan of Indy Road. Not really. Well, the new Indy Road is a lot better than the old one, but I'm still... It's okay. It's an alright track. It's just fine. I'll leave it at that.
I mean, the big thing when it comes to Indy, I think we may have possibly lost out on Aaron there for a brief second.
What? I'm here. No.
There we go. Okay, we're good. Yeah, but Indy, it's just the problem with that track is, I mean, I'm the resident American here on this broadcast, but I can say that Indy, very flat, and as someone who's done officiating for a multi-class sports car race for the opening race of the season was at Indy. And I cried myself to sleep that night after being in race control for that. So that's going to be a pretty unique race here for round number 2 of the European... oh boy, that's not it. The Evolution Sim Racing Series. You can catch a series called the European Sports Car Championship a couple of weeks here on Apex Racing TV, along with all the other fantastic broadcasts that we have here on Apex. The racing action never really stops. We've got action all throughout the week, all throughout the days, occasionally multiple times a day as well. Gives you more of a reason to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss a thing. Aaron, this was a fantastic way to kick this season off, and we have 9 more races between now and the end of the season to savor and enjoy and to run our mouths for about 2.5 hours, which, considering we're commentators, you know that we absolutely love to do. For all the fans tuning into this broadcast here on Apex Racing TV, we really appreciate lots of viewers tuning in. Really awesome to see the enthusiasm around this season. It's going to be fun, Aaron. I think there's going to be a fantastic 10 weeks here on Apex Racing TV. But I think to wrap up the first week and the first broadcast of this Season 6 of the Evolution Sim Racing GT3 Championship, that will just about do it. So for myself, Ron Mons, Aaron Smith joining me in the commentary booth, and Josh Wilkie doing a fantastic job working all the cameras in the virtual production hauler, I say thank you all so very much for watching. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you all again wherever it is in the not too distant future.
Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.